Mm. Hi, everyone. I'm Attorney Lilian Chukura from Lily Legal. I am an immigration lawyer based in Worcester, Massachusetts, but I get to help clients all over the US and all over the world get status for themselves and for their family using the US immigration law system. So today I want to talk to you about how you can get status through family, not necessarily marriage, right? So I talk a lot on this page about how to get status through marriage, how to get status if you were in an abusive marriage. Today, we're going to be doing something a little different. We're going to be talking about all the other family members that you could potentially get status through. Okay, not just marriage. Let's talk about everyone else in your family tree that you could potentially get status from. So, if you are just joining me, if you have any questions, please feel free to put it in the comments. If you are watching this on the replay, go ahead and put your questions in the comments. I always go back and make sure that I answer your questions. So feel free to do that. And like I said, we're going to be covering all the family members that you can get status through that is not marriage based. Okay, we are not talking about marriage today. We are talking about everyone else but your spouse. So, if you would like to ask me questions about your particular situation, you can always book a time to talk to me over Zoom or in person by going to lilylegal.com or by calling my office at 508-443-1788. So, the reason I wanted to do this topic today is because I had a potential client come in and he wanted to know how he could get status in the US. And he is a young man. He did not want to get married. He wasn't ready for the responsibility of being married. And that was not an option for him. Okay. And sometimes people feel that when they're in the US, that their only option is marriage. But technically, marriage is your only option if you have certain situations that make you not eligible for all the other options. So today I'm going to be specifically talking about family, but I will be doing future videos on how you can get status without family. Okay, that's also an option that you could have, is getting status in the US without having a family member file for you. So today, let's get into the family members that could file for you. I'll be covering parents, children, and siblings. Okay, those are the main topics that I'll be talking about. And I will be covering a bonus points about aunts, uncles, nephews, nieces. Okay, so we're going to be covering all those topics today. If you have questions, as always, go ahead and put it in the comments. If you're watching on the replay, go ahead and put your questions in the comment as well. I am so glad you're here with me today, and I hope you get a lot out of this. If you find this video helpful, go ahead and hit the like button, share it if you know someone that could get some benefit out of it. And if you're watching in a place where you can subscribe, go ahead and subscribe so you know every single time that I go live or that I post a new video. Okay, so let's get started. The first topic, like I said, will be parents. How do you get status through your parents? Can you do it in the US? Do you have to be outside of the US? It really all depends, right? It depends on your particular status. So if you are under 21 and you have a US citizen parent or a permanent resident parent that's looking to file for you, that is a great option for you, whether you're in the US or outside of the US. If you are currently in status, so I'll give you an example of what I mean by in status. So if you came here on, let's say, a student visa, and while you're here on a student visa, your parent becomes a US citizen and is now able to file for you, guess what? You don't have to leave the US once a visa is available for you because you're currently in status. So I want to explain that to you because it's something that really hurts a lot of people when it comes time to apply through parents. So if you are over the age of 21 and your US citizen parent is filing for you, you have to be in status in the US when your visa becomes available in order for you to apply for permanent residency in the US. Okay, let me repeat that. In order for you to apply for permanent residency in the US, when a visa becomes available for you, you have to you have to be in status. And a student visa is a way for someone to stay in status while um, they wait for the the visa that their parents filed for them to become available. So there is other options for you, and I think that most of the time people really are surprised on what they can do to maintain their status. And if you have the ability to maintain whatever non-immigrant visa you have while your parent is filing for you, that will make it very, very easy for you to be able to stay in the US and get status. Now, let's see. Hi, Bayan. Welcome. Um, I hope you are enjoying the show so far. And then Sandy had a question. Sandy said, how can I get a student visa? So I will be, and she is outside of the US. So I will be doing a whole video on student visas, the process, what you need, and all of that. But in a general sense, the first thing you need to do is to take the TOEFL wherever you are. There is a standard test that you have to take in order to get into school in the US. So if you were in the US, you'll be taking the SATs. But since you're not, you have to take the TOEFL. You have to get a score that's high enough for a school to be willing to accept you as a student. Now, you also have to show that you have the financial abilities to pay for the school. So if the school is a 4-year college that is 60,000 a year that you want to go to, you have to show that not only do you have the 60,000, but you have um, more than the $60,000 to pay for the school and for you to live in the US, and that you plan on going back. So not only are you here, not only do you have to get into the school, you also have to prove to the US government that you can afford to pay for the school and that you'll be going back home once once you get your degree. Okay. So you have to show financial ability. Either you yourself have the money or you have family that's willing to sponsor you, and they will have to show that they have the money to pay for your program. So if it's a 4-year program, they have to show that not only do they have the money to pay for the first year, but they have the financial ability to continue paying for the next few years. Okay, so that on a general sense, that's how you're able to get a student visa to come to the US. The first step is typically with the school, making sure that you can actually get into school here, and then working with the school to get your I-20 and then applying for the visa. But again, the visa is based on the fact that you'll be going back when you're done, and that you or a sponsor has the financial ability to pay for you to come here and go to school. Okay, so I hope that answered your question, Sandy. Now, back to parents. So I said you can get status through your parents, whether you are under 21 or over 21. Now, if your parent is only a permanent resident and you are over 21 and married, you have to wait for your parent to be a US citizen. So if you're outside of the US, you do have to be patient. You do have to know that it's going to take some time. But once your parent becomes a US citizen, then they are able to file for you, because only US citizens can file for their married children. Okay, so if you stay unmarried, then your permanent resident parent can file for you. But if you get married before they become a US citizen, then you have to start the whole process over again. So if you know that your permanent resident parent is filing for you and you want to basically limit the amount of time you're waiting, you might want to hold off on getting married until you get your visa. However, if you really do want to get married and it is a priority for you, then go ahead and get married. Just know that you will have to be more patient and you will have to wait a little longer for that visa to become available. Okay. So, oh, I'm so glad you find that helpful, Sandy. As always, if anyone has a question, go ahead and put it in the comments. I know I'm covering how to get status through family, but I am happy to answer your other immigration questions as well. So go ahead and do that. So, like I said, parents can file for US citizen parents can file for their children that are under 21, over 21, and married. So even if the child is under 21 and has a child, as long as they're not married, they're still considered immediate relatives. Okay. If the child is over 21 and has a child, but they are not married, they're still considered a child. So it's really more about whether you're married or not, whether you're over 21 or not really a matter of whether you have children. So I've gotten that question a lot. So I wanted to cover that having children does not make you, does not put you in a different category as long as you meet the age requirements, right? So if you're married, just know it is definitely going to take longer than if you were not married. Okay. So US citizens can file for all their children, no matter what their marital status is or what their age is. Permanent residents can only file for their unmarried children. Okay. Permanent residents can only file for their unmarried children. So let's say you're a permanent resident and you want to file for your child. They were previously married. Let's say they got married when they were really young and now they're divorced. They're considered single for the purposes of immigration. So if they are still married, then you have to wait till you're a US citizen. But if they were previously married, but now they're divorced, then they are considered unmarried. So you can file for them as a permanent resident. So that's something to really keep in mind is that there's different categories and the length of time is really going to depend on the category that you're in. So if you want to know what length of time is going to take for you as a parent to file for your children, go ahead and watch my previous video on how long the cases are going to take so that you can see what the priority dates that we're working with right now are and how you can gauge how long it's going to take. Okay. Because that's usually the number one reason people give me for not following through with filing for their children that are over 21 or their children that are married is that, oh, it's going to take so long. But, okay, but the problem is just because it takes time doesn't mean it wouldn't happen. Okay. You don't want to not file for your child because it's going to take time. Yes, they have to be patient. Yes, it's going to take some time for them to get their status. But guess what? That's the path for them to get status. Relying on them marrying a US citizen or anything like that is a path that might not lead to them eventually becoming citizens. But you, as a permanent resident or a US citizen, filing for your child, no matter how long that takes, is a path, is a clear path for them to then become citizens and be able to come to the US, even if they're married with their children. Okay. So just know the difference on who US citizen versus permanent resident parents can file for. Okay. Now let's talk about children. Okay. Can your children file for you? Yes. Children that are US citizens can file for their parents. Okay. So if your child is still a permanent resident, know that they are not legally allowed to file for you. Only US citizen children can file for their parents. Only US citizen children can file for their parents. And that US citizen child has to be 21. Okay. So not only do you have to be a US citizen, you have to be 21 in order to file for your parents. But here's the great thing about a US citizen child being able to file for their parents. Let's say you came to the US with a student visa or with a visiting visa and you overstayed. You then had a child that ended up being 21, becoming a US citizen, and now your child wants to file for you. But then you remember, oh, I overstayed my visa. That's going to be a problem. Well, it's not, because your child is over 21 and a US citizen. So parents of US citizens are considered immediate relatives. So that gives you special benefits. So as a parent of a US citizen, if you overstayed your visa or if you worked in the US without authorization, guess what? Your child filing for you makes it okay, right? You're still able to gain status even though you overstayed your visa, even though you worked without authorization, because your US citizen child is the one filing for you and you are an immediate relative of a US citizen. There are certain benefits that's specifically reserved for immediate relatives of US citizens. And that's one of the benefits. So automatically, if your child is over 21 and a US citizen and you are their parent, you get those benefits. Your child just has to go through the process of filing for you, whether you're in the US or outside of the US, your child can go through the process of filing for you. Now, this also applies to step parent, step child relationship. So let's say you're married to a person and the marriage took place before the children turned 18, right? Before the children's 18th birthday, you married their mother or their father. And now you are their step parent for the immigration purposes. Okay. So that's what really matters here, is that are you their step parent for immigration purposes? Because just because you're married to someone's um, biological parent does not make you a step parent for immigration purposes. So, for you to be a step parent for immigration purposes, you have to have married the biological parent or the adoptive parent before the child turned 18. And if you do that, you are now the step parent. That means you can get immigration benefits from the child. So if you have a stepchild that you were married to their parent before they turned 18, now they're 21, they have status, they're US citizens, and they want to file for you, they can. And you will be considered an immediate relative, which means if you overstayed your visa, if you worked without authorization, that will be waived. Okay, you will be able to gain status in the US without having to leave, because you are the immediate relative of a US citizen. So, like I said, being an immediate relative of a US citizen is one of the ways that you can really change your whole immigration trajectory. Okay. So, today I want to talk about not marriage, right? We know that marriage to a US citizen makes you an immediate relative of a US citizen. But sometimes people don't want to get married, or they're not ready for the commitment of marriage. And I want to give you other options that are out there for you. If you already have some family in the US and you want to know if that family member can file for you, well, this is the video for you so that you know who can actually file for you and that you are basically getting the right information. Because I get people all the time that's like, hey, I have a cousin or I have a niece that I want to file for. What's the process? And unfortunately, if the if the goal is to get the person here to stay permanently, the US citizen or permanent resident is not able to file for a cousin, is not able to file for a niece or a nephew. But at the end, I will tell you how you can possibly apply for a niece or nephew but there's certain steps you have to take. Okay. So the next group is siblings, right? Can your siblings file for you? And this is one of the ones that people always, they know there's a possibility for a sibling to file for them, but they're not willing to wait. Okay. They're not willing to wait the time because honestly, it is over a decade that you have to wait. You have to wait right now, like 13 to 14 years for a visa to become available for siblings. So can you file for your sibling? Yes. But but you have to be a US citizen in order to do that. You can only file for your siblings if you are a US citizen. You can only file for your parents if you are a US citizen. You can only file for your married children if you are a US citizen. Okay? So, if you are not a US citizen yet and you want to file for your siblings, just know you have to wait. Once you become a citizen, you can go ahead and put in that application with the knowledge that it's going to take several years for a visa to become available. That might change. There's some rumblings in Congress that might change how long that wait time is going to be or where that waiting has to take place. So just know there might be things coming up that might change certain situations for people. But for right now, you do have to wait. Okay. So that is that's really the biggest caveat on filing for siblings. But I'll tell you the same thing I tell every single person that tells me it's going to take too long. My first question is, how long have you been a US citizen? Okay? How long have you been a US citizen? And most of the time, the person it has been a US citizen for over 10 years. And I'm like, listen, if you filed for your siblings the day you became a US citizen, that's 10 years that would have been counting towards the time, right? That would have been counting towards the 14 years. So instead of feeling like, oh, you waited too long, just know, yeah, the day you became a citizen is the best day to file for your siblings. But the next best day is the day that you realize that you can file for your siblings. Like, just know you can file for them today, and the benefit doesn't stop at them. That's the thing. So let's say you file for your sibling today. They're 24. They're not married yet. They're just trying to figure out their life. The visa becomes available in 14 years. Now they're married. Now they have children. So now the visa that you filed when they were 24 not only benefits them. Yes, now they're 38, right? We're adding 14 years. So now they're 38, they're married, they have children under the age of 10, and now a visa becomes available. What happens now is not only does that your sibling gain status, but they can actually come to the US with their entire family. So they can come to the US with their spouse and their children. Again, as long as the children are under 21, they can come to the US with the children as well. So again, even if they are, even if they already have children and their children are, let's say, 2 years old, right? They can still gain status 14 years from now because they will still be under 21. So I'm not telling you that you have to file for your siblings, but if that is a goal that you have, is for your siblings to eventually gain status, that's one way of doing it. Okay. Of putting in the application and just having everyone know it's going to take some time. But when the visa becomes available, not only is your sibling getting status, if they're married, their spouse is getting status. If they have children that are under 21, their children are also getting status, all because you, the US citizen sibling, filed for them. Okay. So that's my, that's always my spiel. to people that ask me about this and then freak out because the time that it's going to take. Yes, it's going to take time, but is it worth it at the end when you wait the 14 years and now you're able to not only have your sibling come, but their whole immediate family come? That is a benefit that is really only reserved for US citizens. And there's a reason for that, because you can change an entire family's trajectory. Okay. So just understand the reasoning behind why I'm including it as an option, even though it's going to take several years. I'm still going to include it as an option because of the benefits to it. Okay. So, hi, Erin. Welcome from Monrovia. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. We're talking about how to get status in the US without being married to someone that has status in the US. Okay. So marriage is not the only way. You can have other family members in the US, like a parent, a child, or a sibling that is able to file for you. So I wanted to cover that and make sure that you all know what your options are as you're going through and figuring out if you want to come to the US. What options are available to you? What family members you actually have in the US that could file for you? Okay. So not every family member can file for you. So your cousin, your aunt, your niece, your nephew, unfortunately, cannot file for you. Your grandparents cannot file for you. They can file for your parent. And then when your parent gets status, they can then file for you. Okay. So that's typically the sequence of that. Now, I said in the beginning that I'll tell you some bonus tips for people that want to file for a niece or nephew that they've been taking care of and they're not really sure what to do. Okay. So, like I said, you cannot file for a niece or nephew, but but you might be able to change their category from niece and nephew to child. And how do you do this? By adoption. Okay. So let's say you have a niece or nephew, their parents passed away. You're the one taking care of them. They're under the age of 16, and you want to go through the process of adoption. You want to bring them to the US. You want them to live with you. You're the one taking care of them anyway. So you want to make sure that they are being taken care of by you personally. Now, what's the options available? Adoption. Okay. You can go through the process of adoption. And because it's going to be an international adoption, there are several steps that you might have to take. Okay. So there's two ways to do an adoption. So you're in the Hague Convention country. For example, Ghana is a Hague Convention country. Kenya is a Hague Convention country. Nigeria is not. So the options available are a little different for those two countries. For countries that are Hague Convention versus not Hague Convention. Now, if you are trying to adopt an orphan and you have no interest in moving back to the country where the orphan lives and live with them and take care of them for 2 years before filing for them to get status, then your option is to go through an adoption service provider in the US in order to be basically approved to adopt. Okay, so you have to go through the adoption process, just like anyone else, even though it's a relative that you're trying to adopt, because they're going to be categorized as orphans. You have to go through that process. Now, if you're willing and able to move to the country, especially if it's not a Hague Convention country. So if the person lives in a non-Hague Convention country, example, Nigeria, you're able to move to the country, live there with the child for 2 years, and then you can file for the child to get a visa to the US. So that's one option. However, if you're in a Hague Convention country, that is not an option. If you're a US citizen and the person you're trying to adopt is in a Hague Convention country, that is not an option. If you're not a US citizen and the person you're trying to adopt is in a Hague Convention country, well, it doesn't matter, right? The Hague Convention only applies to US citizens. The Hague Convention only applies to US citizens. So if you are not a US citizen yet, you're a permanent resident, while the often and the living in the country for 2 years, options are available to you. So just keep that in mind. If you are adopting with your spouse and your spouse lives in the home country and your spouse can meet the 2 year requirement, then you personally do not have to meet the 2 year requirement. Only you or your spouse has to meet the 2 year requirement, but both of you have to do the adoption together. So that's really, really important to note. But yes, in order to file for nephews and nieces and cousins, the adoption process has to be complete before they turn 16. Okay. So it's really, really, really important that if you're going to be going through that process, or if that's an option that's appealing to you, that you reach out and speak to someone before the child turns 16, because once they turn 16 it's going to be impossible unless they have another sibling that you're also trying to adopt. Okay, that's under the age of 16. So that's something to keep in mind. That's an option. If you really want to file for your niece or your nephew, you need to be open to the fact that you will have to go through the adoption process and know what that adoption process is. I have done a video on my channel on adoption, so feel free to watch that. And if I get enough interest on adoptions from Hague Convention and non-Hague Convention countries, I can do a whole video on what the process is really like, and what you can look at as far as fees and costs and all of that. I have done some research on it, so I can definitely do a more in depth video on just adoption from different countries and what you can expect to pay, how long you can expect it to take, and what um, resources you need to have before you even start. Okay, so in case you're just joining me, welcome. If you're watching this on the replay, welcome as always. Feel free to put your questions in the comments. And today we're just going over the other family members other than your spouse that you can get status through, and that would be your parents, your siblings, and your children. Remember, to get status through your children have to be 21 years old and US citizens. In order to get status through your siblings have to be 21 years old and US citizens. To get status through your parent, if your parent is a US citizen, you just have to be their child, right? It doesn't matter if you're married, unmarried, over 21 or under 21. However, if your parent is a permanent resident, you have to remain unmarried in order for them to file for you. So lawful permanent residents can only file for their children that are unmarried. Now, if the children are over 21, it is going to take longer. So just keep that in mind as well. But those are the people that you can get status from other than your spouse. And then remember my bonus tip: if you want to file for family members that are not in those categories, but that they are under the age of 16, you have the option of going through the adoption process and basically recategorizing them from nephew, niece, cousin, whatever, to child. And now that they're categorized as child through adoption, you're now able to file for them as well. So, and remember, that's for US citizens and permanent residents. You're both allowed to go through the adoption process. The rules might be a little different depending on the country you're adopting from, but you can use adoption as a way to change someone from a niece and nephew that you can't file for to an adopted child that you can file for. So I hope you found this interesting, and I hope you got a lot out of it. If you have any questions about this or anything else, you can book a time to talk to me over Zoom or in person by going to lilylegal.com or calling my office at 508-443-1788. So that is it for today. Thank you so much for your time. And remember, if you like this video, hit the like button. If you know someone who needs to hear this, please go ahead and share it. And if you are listening in a place where you can subscribe, like my YouTube channel, and you don't want to miss anything, then go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Once again, I am Lilian Chukura. I am the owner of Lily Legal, and we are an immigration law firm. We help our clients get status for themselves and for their family members using the U.S. immigration law system. Thank you so much for your time, and I will see you next week, Friday, for more immigration chat. Bye for now.